1 year, I'm shooting guns, deploying, hanging out with the boys, blowing stuff up, and living my best life in Special Forces. The next year, I transitioned to aviation and had to rip the rank off my chest, put on a WOCS, Warrant Officer Candidate School rank, which essentially is not a rank, signifying to the entire base that I'm the new dude. I'm the new dude at Fort Rucker. So the point of this video is to show you the value of having an identity, but also the danger of tying yourself to a specific identity and being married to that identity, because that's what happened when I transitioned to Special Forces without even realizing it, right? And before you say, well, duh, aviation is not the same as Special Forces, you should have expected that. I knew the culture was going to be different. I knew there was going to be differences, but to the extent that it was not what I realized. And I did not realize how good I had it where I was and what I was getting myself into. So the decision may have been the wrong decision temporarily, but it ended up being a good decision in the long run. And we're all guilty of this to some extent or another, right? That's why when so many people retire, they lose a lot of purpose and they lose a lot of direction for where their life's going, because they've spent their entire lives pouring into this one career, this one thing that defines them and that they're really good at. So it's hard to walk away and it's hard to let that go and move into the next phase of life. So I just want to share some lessons learned from my experience of going through that identity loss, how I battled with it, and also what I learned from battling with it, that in retrospect, if I would have known before I made the transition, it would have made my transition a lot smoother and I would have avoided a lot of heartache along the way. All right, lesson number 1, your identity should not live on a tab, on a resume, on a business card. Those things are temporary. They expire and life can change and those titles can be stripped away. So what you can do is you can tie your identity to your values, to your traits that you've learned along the way, right? As a Special Forces guy, I learned resilience, I learned hard work, I learned problem solving, I learned adaptability. Those are things that are directly transferable to the next phase of life. So I can hold on to those instead of holding on to, oh, I was a Green Beret, and let that lead me to thinking that I should be treated differently or I should be treated a different way, because that's not the case when you leave an organization like that, because not everybody understands where you came from, right? So for you, it might be discipline from sports, could be like leadership from business, could be just the grit of going through the ups and downs of life, raising a family, things like that, because titles fade, skills endure. So build an identity on something that lasts for you and for your future. All right, lesson number 2, transfer your edge, transfer your skills appropriately to your new identity. I made the mistake of expecting things to be the same when I left and having to work through that, right? So when you step into something new, into a new arena, you don't throw away who you were and everything you learned before, right? You still have a foundation that you've built that you can use into the next phase of life. So whether you're transitioning out of the military or transitioning to a new job, you've still done something before that's valuable. And you just need to find a way to use your skill sets that you have learned before and implement them into your new role, because you have an edge. You have something that makes you different, that makes you valuable, and that gives you added value to whatever team or group you're in. So identify that. The sooner you do, the easier it'll be to find your purpose and to feel like you fit in to whatever transition you've made. All right, third lesson is to embrace the rookie mindset. As difficult as it is, this is very tough for transitioning senior officers in the military, transitioning senior NCOs and executives going to a new job, going to a startup, whatever. It's hard to let go of the influence and experience that you had. And you don't have to let go of the experience, but you need to humble yourself, because arrogance kills faster than inexperience, right? You want to integrate with the team and you want to show your value, but you don't want to come in and say, this is how we used to do it because back in my day, everything's better, right? That's never received well, and it always comes off as an arrogant statement. So when I walked into aviation, I had to understand that I wasn't getting graded on how well I could shoot, move, and communicate, right? I was getting graded on how well I could memorize emergency procedures and limitations, and how well I could move the flight controls and manipulate them to operate the helicopter. So if you fight to be recognized for who you were, in my case, if I fought to be like, hey, I was a Green Beret, nobody cares. And it just would have made me look like an ass. So the faster you lean into being teachable, the faster you'll accelerate and integrate into whatever transition you've made. All right, lesson 4. This might have been the hardest lesson for me throughout my career in aviation until I got back to the 160th and back in special operations. But accepting the culture shift was so difficult for me to do because there were so many stupid things that I had to deal with when I got to flight school and had to just deal with the TRADOC environment of the regular Army. It was a completely different world from where I came from, and it sucked, to be honest. There was a lot of times and a lot of things that I just looked at like, why are you doing it this way? You can do it A, B, C, D, E, F, G ways, and it would be better than the way that you guys chose, right? So I know we're all guilty of bitching about culture and complaining and just letting it bog us down. But that's the danger, right? Is if it becomes a habitual thing, it does bog you down. And it doesn't just bog you down, it bogs others down around you. So this doesn't mean you have to be happy with the culture, right? But this does mean that you should accept it and be okay with it and realize that it's not going to change unless we do something about it. And especially in like a flight school situation, you're not going to do anything about it, right? So sure, you can bitch about it, but don't let it be something that the bitching actually affects how you're living your life, right? And actually starts bringing your mood down and your mental state down, because that's what I did. And it was one of many factors that led to a long struggle for me. So just be wary of that, right? Because I know we all like to bitch and complain in the military and in general, right? We always bitch about our bosses or some stupid HR decision, some stupid training we have to do, but don't let it consume you. Don't let it consume others around you. If somebody's that person that's always bitching, always complaining, and you can tell that it's bringing you down and it's bringing morale down, separate yourself from them or talk to them and be like, hey, dude, I get it. This sucks, but it's not helping anybody what you're doing. So identity shifts are unavoidable. Identity loss is avoidable, and it's how you approach it, right? Yes, there's going to be changes in your title. There's going to be changes in your job, in your situation, and life is going to throw whatever, Murphy at you all the time. So you're going to have to adjust fire and figure out what's next. But here's the key difference. If you can detach from your titles, if you can transfer all your experience that you've learned from whatever you did before, embrace being the new dude in whatever phase of life it is or situation you find yourself in, and accept that culture instead of holding on to the past and trying to be somebody that you're not anymore, you will have a much smoother time with any transition you have in life. So the reason I am even doing this right now is not to embody who I was, right? Is not to pretend that I'm a Green Beret still or I'm a 160th pilot still. It's to take all those lessons that I've learned, bundle them up, and enhance my future and hopefully your future as well, if you'll take the lessons learned that I learned the hard way and implement them. Because that's what life is about. That's what experience is about, is taking what you've learned and building upon that and not holding on to it and not even being proud of some of the bad decisions that you made, right? Or the less than ideal decisions, right? Learning from them, making yourself a better human being, and living with purpose and intentionality through all of those decisions. All right, that's enough. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Check out some other videos if you're interested in some lessons learned from the special operations world. All right, cheers.